Hey everyone, welcome back to Minding My Mental Health. I am Tanitra Williams, and we are about to start our episode. You guys know what I want you to do. I want you to hashtag live. Let me know where you're watching from. I'm going to jump over to Instagram really quick to get that live started, and we will get to rolling. All right. I also want, if you're watching this again, hashtag live, let me know where you're watching from. I want you to share this video to your pages, to your story. I'm going to do the same because I want to get the word out. I think it's a really important topic to talk about today. We're talking about the therapeutic process. And so, again, I'm just going to pause for a moment as we share, as you're jumping on. Make sure you're tagging and sharing this video. I'm going to share it to a couple groups that I am a part of. Okay. All right. And I'm going to share a couple more places. Okay, so again, my name is Tanitra Williams. I am a licensed professional counselor, and today's topic is walking through the therapeutic process from top to bottom. And so, in today's video, what I want to do is actually get people to understand the therapy process. Sometimes it can be kind of mysterious for people, and so I want to tear down that stigma that a lot of people have concerning therapy. So I see a couple people on here. Make sure you tag your friends, tag your family, share this video to your story, share this video to your page. Okay. So again, many people are interested. Hey, Venetia. Many people are interested in therapy or at least kind of curious about the process, but they're also a little bit afraid because it's an unknown process for people. And so what I want to do is give some insight. The main reason for that is because I want to take away some of the fear and anxiety that keeps people from reaching out and experiencing some breakthrough that could come through therapy. So again, I want to tear down some myths and also begin to just walk people through that process to ease their fear so that they will be more comfortable reaching out and doing what they need to do for their healing because they are in fact worth it, right? So let's just start from the beginning. Let's say someone is curious about therapy and they think, I sort of been thinking about it. I've been playing around with the idea. I'm not sure if this is something I want to do. So what I want to do is talk through reasons, some very common reasons that people do come to therapy. Because I think when people start to realize, oh, other people are seeking therapy for this reason, other people are getting help for this, other people are doing, these types of things, I think it will help a lot. I'm still tagging people over here if you're wondering why I'm looking down over here. There we go. Okay. All right. So let's just kind of look at the beginning. So many people need to seek therapy. And here are some common reasons that people do reach out. So it could be life transitions. For example, if someone is getting married, that's a big transition. Someone getting a divorce, again, another huge transition. They had a breakup. They're moving from city to city. All of these things, whether they are positive or considered negative, they're all major life transitions and they can be stressful. Starting or stopping a new job. Of course, we see people with anxiety, people with depression, grief. If you lose a loved one, that's a hard thing. And I've been seeing people recently saying, hey, it seems like I'm losing several people at once. So it's not just the grief of one family member. They may have one and then 2 weeks later another one. And, those types of things considered more complicated grief. And so those things can be very hard for people, a reason for people to reach out and get counseling. Relationship problems. Those relationship issues can be things as far as marital or romantic relationships, but it could also be your relationship with your sister or your mother or your children. These are all still considered relationship issues. Feeling stuck, personal growth issues are reasons people reach out for counseling. Recognizing unhealthy cycles in their life. They start recognizing they're seeing these same patterns over and over again. spiritual conflict, beliefs are not sure about what they believe spiritually, work stress, low self esteem, academic stress, addiction, trauma, poor communication skills, feeling out of control, feeling lost. Now, why am I going through this list of things that people go to counseling for? Because I want people to hear that these are everyday reasons that people would go to counseling. For a long time, people would say, I don't need counseling because I'm not crazy. And we see here that going to counseling for any of those reasons that I just listed, it's not about being crazy. It's saying, hey, I recognize that I am going through a transition, or I am going through something that is a little difficult for me, and I'm going to get some help. So I think it's really important that we recognize there is so many reasons people seek therapy, even like I said earlier, just for personal growth and development. Now, think about this again, that stigma has been around that you have to be crazy, but this shows us that people seek therapy because they just want to be better. Feel, so we often downplay the need of therapy because we think we can handle these transitions. We think we can handle a lot of this stuff on our own. But here are some signs that you may need some therapy. Okay, so here are some things, and if I say anything that stands out to you, you can make comments. I encourage you guys to make comments. Give me some hearts, some fires, some shares. All that stuff helps with the analytics, right? But let's talk about some symptoms or signs that you may be experiencing and you don't recognize. These may be some signs that I actually do need to seek some help and seek some therapy. The first one is feeling unmotivated. If you feel like you're stuck and maybe you want to do something, but you also recognize that your motivation level is really low. Maybe you are an overthinker. That's another sign that you may want to seek some therapy. Feeling worried. If you are a worrywart, feeling stressed, an overthinker, changes in your eating, changes in your sleeping pattern, feeling really angry, having panic attacks, mood swings, increased drug use, increased alcohol use. If you notice you started to isolate, having flashbacks from trauma, self harm behavior, hopelessness, suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts. If you're crying often or feeling down, a lot of people don't recognize that even their physical mood can be a result of emotional things that they're carrying. So if you're feeling drained all the time, you're feeling down all the time, your energy levels are low and you just don't have the energy, that is often a result of emotional things that need to be unpacked. Difficulty getting your life organized or getting things organized, feeling confused a lot, feeling disconnected from people, feeling like you can't connect with your friends or your family, your children. All of these may be symptoms that it's time for you to reach outside of yourself and seek some help, seek some professional help. Um, so once a person recognizes that, hey, I'm going through some of these common things that people go to therapy for, or I'm experiencing some of these symptoms that may be suggesting that I need therapy. How do we start that process? And so that's what I want to talk about. And of course, like I say, if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to put that in the comment section. So what are the steps and where we're talking about finding a therapist? So I actually did a reel on this recently, but I want to go back over it. How do you find a therapist that's a good fit for you? 3 things you need to look at. You need to see, is this therapist an expert in the area that I need, which means do they have the qualifications or the training to address my specific issue? Now, here's the thing. If you are a licensed professional counselor, there are certain things that we've all been kind of trained to do. If you're dealing with some depression, if you're dealing with some anxiety, ADHD, maybe even some relationship issues, those are kind of what we would consider general things that a lot of people come into therapy for. And so most people are trained with those things. So when we're talking about the expertise part, if you are saying, hey, I want someone to work with my marriage, it's okay for you to ask, hey, do you work with couples, or do you enjoy working with couples? Do you specialize in working with couples? Because those people are going to be able to bring more insight, or more knowledge, more expertise to help. If, again, working with children. So if there's something specific that you want to address, and it's okay to ask that person, what's your level of competency or expertise in this particular area? Because there are counselors who absolutely enjoy working with couples. I love working with couples. But there are other therapists that actually don't really want to deal with a lot of relationship there, marital kind of issues. And so if you have someone who says, I'm a trained licensed professional therapist, but I don't really like working with couples, you probably wouldn't go with them. But likewise, if you were taking your child in for therapy and someone says, I don't really like working with children, you should find someone who enjoys and has experience working with children, because that approach is going to be different when you're working with children or when you're working with couples or even working with some specific diagnosis or specific issues. So you want to make sure that their expertise or their knowledge base matches what you need. The next thing you want to do is to make sure you feel compatible with the person. Okay. This is important. A lot of times we just say, I just found somebody. No, the therapeutic process is a very intimate process. And when I say intimate, I mean it's a place where people come in and they share things oftentimes they've never shared with anybody else. And so you want somebody that you can feel safe with, someone that you feel comfortable being your authentic self. Um, Someone that understands you. And so oftentimes you will see specifically African Americans or another minority group looking for a therapist in that particular population. Why? Because there are certain things that they don't want to have to explain to their therapist as they are processing their own emotional stuff. And so having someone who already understands certain things can help them. Now, that does not mean you can't go to someone who doesn't look like you, or that you can't go to someone outside of a certain group and they can't connect with you. So I don't want you to be closed off because you found someone and they weren't able to work with you for whatever reason, and you went with someone else. You can still have a very strong therapeutic relationship with someone who doesn't look like you and someone who may even seem like they didn't get you at first, as long as you can be honest and open and trust that process and connect with them. Okay. The next thing is availability. I actually see this one a lot. We want to work with specific people. And so we will say, I want to work with that person, but that person, their schedule may be full, or that person may only work, this amount of hours or work during these specific times. If that person is full or your schedules don't align, it doesn't matter how great they are. You won't be able to meet with them. So I don't want people saying, I want to go to therapy, but I only want to do it with this one person, and that person's schedule doesn't match mine, so I don't get it at all. Find someone else who is a good match with you, because there are other people that can match with you. Find that person that can actually see you, because being seen and walking through the process is better than waiting 5 years for there to become availability on that person's schedule, right? So you want to make sure that there is actually time that works for both people. Okay, so these are some things to look for when you're looking for a therapist. Now, how do I find these people? So I want to give you guys some resources. If you have paper and pen, I encourage you to write these down. Here are some places you can go to find good therapists. So the first place, and I'm only giving the ones that I trust and I know. There are others, they are, I'm sure, very trustworthy. These are just the ones that I recommend the most. So the first thing I tell people to do is check with your insurance company. A lot of people go and they'll find someone online and they get all excited. They've set up a time, and then they'll reach out and they'll say, oh, you're not on my insurance panel, so I can't afford to pay out of pocket. And then they have to start that process all over. So one place to even start is to check with your insurance and ask them, do they have a list of therapists that are in network? And they do. And they can give you a list. You can even tell your your insurance company, I want someone who's this way. Insurance companies actually will call us and they will do audits, and they will say, are you accepting clients? What things do you specialize in? They want to know those things, because as their clients, as their customers are calling them, they can say, this person is in network and this person works with these people. They want to know demographics as well, because if someone calls and says, I want to find a Black female, they know that these 500 therapists are Black females in this state or whatever. So again, it helps to start with your insurance company. That way you already know that it's covered. Also, they can tell you what your plan has and what your plan covers. For example, when you're talking about insurance, there are people who have 3 sessions that their insurance covers 100% free. They don't have a copay or anything. And so that's good to know. So people will come in and sometimes they're worried about the cost. And when we run their insurance, I'll tell them, you actually have 3 free sessions. After that, you only have to pay a copay. So again, that's a positive thing to know. Sometimes I will tell them you still owe a deductible, and so you're going to have to basically pay the out of pocket rate until your deductible is met, and then then your insurance kicks in. You want to check with your insurance to know those things before you get, I guess, basically too attached to someone if you're not going to be able to pay that self-pay rate. Okay. The next place to look at, I tell people, is Psychology Today. It is a directory of therapists, and it is a national directory. And so you simply put in the zip code where you live, and you can find a therapist right there. And during the Psychology Today on the profile, and what it does, and all of these have profiles, it allows you to see the picture of the therapist, read a little blurb about what they believe, what they are experts in, what their philosophy is, what their therapeutic approach is, and so you get to see all of those things kind of play out. So I really like Psychology Today. There is another one called therapyforblackgirls.com. Again, I highly recommend this one. Why? Because it specializes in finding therapists of color. A lot of times people go to Psychology Today and they are looking specifically for someone of color. And so again, being able to go there, you're going to find an African American therapist, and you can find people. And again, you're going to be able to look at their profile. Oftentimes, these profiles do have what insurance they accept. Sometimes they don't, but you can always look for that as well. And then there's one called therapyforblackmen.org. Now, I looked at this one right before the session, and therapyforblackmen.org, that website is still under construction. So again, make sure if you don't see Therapy for Black Men, if you can't get on that site, if they don't update it soon, you can go to Therapy for Black Girls. You don't have to be a woman to get a referral. It's just a directory that helps. Most of those therapists will be accepting males, females, whatever. Again, it's just a directory so you can find therapists. So again, that's psychologytoday.com. That's therapyforblackgirls.com, and that's therapyforblackmen.org. The .org is still under construction right now. You can check back maybe in a couple of weeks to see if they have updated their site. But those are four resources: your insurance and those three websites that help you find someone that is compatible with you and what you need. Now, let's get into the actual process of the therapy part, okay? So again, y'all let me know if you have any questions or comments in the comment section so I can address those as we're going. What do I expect when I go into therapy? I can tell there are people that come in and they are absolutely terrified. And so I really try to make people feel at ease and feel comfortable. But I know that is a scary process, knowing that you're about to go in and possibly be very vulnerable with someone that you don't know. So what do you expect? It basically starts with what we call an initial assessment or an intake session. During this time, this is the time where the therapist is gathering information, and the client is basically sharing about their background. Their background meaning about their parents, how they were raised, how they grew up, if they experienced trauma, if they had a loving relationship with their parents. We're just getting all of this information. We're also learning during that time, what's your presenting issue? Presenting issue is basically what brings you in today. Your medical history. What are your goals for therapy? So that first session is really a lot of information collection. This is important for people to understand, because sometimes they come in and when they leave that initial session, they say, we didn't do anything. And the truth of the matter is, you actually did a lot, right? You shared so that now that therapist can understand kind of what's going on a bit more and can give you some insight as to how we're going to move forward. But also, you are a part of the goal setting. And so during that time, you're also establishing rapport, because that therapeutic relationship is super important. Again, you need to be comfortable with your therapist. You need to feel like they know what they're doing. You need to feel like they're not judging you and all of this. Now, sometimes, I have to say this, sometimes clients feel judged even if their therapist is not judging them, meaning they have guilt or some level of shame, and they bring that in, and oftentimes they'll say, I'm feeling like you're judging me. And I try to reassure my clients, I am absolutely not judging you. My job is not to judge you. My desire is not to judge you. My job and my desire is to provide a safe place for you to process through this journey. So again, we're establishing rapport, getting to know each other, right? You can ask questions about of your therapist as well, more about their expertise and their training and their therapeutic approach and all of that. And then you're also doing goal setting. So that first session, you're gathering information, establishing a connection between the therapist and the client, and then you're looking at what goals you may have. The next part of the therapy process is where we just begin to explore and learn insight. Now, that first session, you're not going to get all of the information from this person that you're going to need for the whole process. So I think the information gathering is still going to be happening through the first part of this process as well. But during this, what we call exploration and insight, this is where we start to look and explore. Do we see any behavioral patterns, any thinking patterns? We start exploring what emotions you may have, how you're feeling during certain things. You begin to look at your thoughts. You begin to look at your behaviors. Every time dad does this, I do this. Every time mom says this, I react this way. So what are we doing? We start to look at these patterns so we get more understanding of why people are responding that way. We get more of an understanding of how to break negative patterns and how to reestablish healthier patterns, right? So it's really important that we begin to have insight. Now, insight is not always just about behavior. Insight can just be some aha moments. I can't tell you how many times people come in and as they're talking, they start to recognize, oh my gosh, I didn't recognize that I was doing this. And sometimes one of the questions I'll say, when did you notice that behavior started? And they'll start saying, well, I was about this age. And I'll say, well, was there anything that happened during that age that was out of the ordinary? And then they'll share oftentimes something really traumatic or something that was life changing. Maybe it wasn't trauma, but it may have been life changing. And then we begin to say, oh, so this was a protection mechanism that possibly served you well for a part of your life, and now it's no longer serving you. Now we have to adjust the behavior. But when they get the insight, it helps them to understand how to adjust and shift their behaviors more effectively. We also begin to work on interventions and skill building. So a lot of times when we're talking about intervention and skill building, there are times, especially when I'm working with couples, I work a lot with communication skills because couples will come in and they will absolutely love each other and they don't know how to effectively communicate with one another. So we're teaching skills. And it's important when you're talking about these processes of therapy that just because someone teaches you a skill in one session does not mean you become a master of that skill just because you sat through it. It's going to take practice, and practice is not just one time. Practice is, it may be 6 months before you go, we're sort of kind of getting it. It may be 8 months. And then you start to go, I'm looking back and we're doing so much better, right? So it's important that you do have some patience with the process of therapy and understanding you're going to be learning skills, you're going to be getting some insight, you're going to be getting wisdom and all of those things. Sometimes your therapist may give you some homework. It's important that you follow through and do the homework that your therapist assigns. A lot of the homework is so you can become more self-aware. For example, when I worked more so with teenagers, I would give them a thing called an anger log, which did what? It allowed them every time they got angry, they would have to write down what triggered their anger. They would have to write down how their body was responding when they were in anger. They had to write down what they were thinking when they start to feel angry. And so why? It was bringing awareness to them. So they started to say, oh, when I felt triggered, my body did this. So then I knew it was time for me to use a coping skill to calm my body down. And so the homework is so you can develop more insight, more understanding of yourself and ways that you can grow. Sometimes homework may be, I actually assigned someone recently a touch assignment. It was a couple and I assigned the way I wanted them to touch for a certain amount of period, for a certain number of days, a certain amount of time for a certain amount of days, because there had been some disconnection. And so the assignment was simply to touch your partner for this amount of time every single day for the next 2 weeks. Why? Those things are specific for each person. And so your assignments may not be like your friend's assignment who may also be in therapy. It's individualized because it's based on what you need. So make sure you take advantage and do your homework if you have a therapist that assigns homework. The other thing is you start as you're going through the process of developing and growing. You look at your goals and you start to see, am I making progress? Am I not making progress? And you start to review what's going well, what am I still struggling with? Um, where are the issues? Let me know. I see people here. Let me know. Is this helping you guys? If you guys have questions, make sure you put in the comments so I can answer those questions as we're going through. Again, you get feedback from your therapist, you get insights and understanding. Adjusting interventions, that's when we start making evaluations. So you begin to say, is this approach working? Because sometimes what the therapist is doing, it doesn't really connect with you. And so you may have to say, this approach doesn't really work with me, but let's look at some other things, and your therapist can say, okay, well, let's try a different approach when we're talking about kind of your growth. And then as you continue to progress, you go through what they call termination and maintenance, which is basically you prepare to stop the counseling on a continual basis. And you, because you've now worked through some issues, you've learned some self-regulation, you've learned how to manage and to cope in a healthy way, you've learned the skills that you needed to learn. Now, some people, I will say this, some people never fully terminate. What they do is they have maintenance. So they never terminate the therapeutic relationship. They just don't come as often. So most people, it's typical that people may come in about once a week. If they get to a place where they're doing really well, they may say, I don't want to stop and cut this off because it helps me, but I don't feel like I need to come every week. Or the therapist has said, hey, you're making progress. You don't need to come every week. But what you can do is come once a month. And depending, again, sometimes it's just check in once a quarter after it's been, sometimes I've had clients literally for years, and I may see them maybe 3 or 4 times a year because they're just coming in for maintenance. They've been doing great. They did a lot of work on the front end. And now they're just, hey, I just want to check in every so often to make sure that I have a safe place that I can process what's going on, basically, so I can continue the progress that we've made. Okay. So throughout the process, the client is encouraged to engage in a lot of self reflection, take an active role in your healing and doing the work. A lot of people come in with the idea, and again, people will come in and after 3 or 4 sessions, they're saying this doesn't work. It works, right? The therapy can work. But what I will say is you have to be engaged in the process. And also, you can't expect some magical meeting that only lasts 1 hour for 1 week to turn around behavior that you've had for 30, 40, sometimes 50 or 60 years. You have to be willing to say, I'm going to go through this process and take it by layers. Because number one, if you made drastic change that quickly, if you made that kind of massive shift in 3 sessions, we have to wonder if it's going to be lasting, because are you just making some big adjustments that your internal self is not able to maintain? And so we want to make sure that you are doing things in a healthy way and in a healthy fashion, just kind of like weight loss. You have people who have massive amounts of weight loss because they do some fad diet or they take some medication, and it's amazing, but it doesn't last. And we want your therapeutic change. We want your healing to be something that's not just temporary. We want you to really be able to grow. And sometimes that growth takes a little minute. So be patient with that. So I want to talk briefly about some things that can hinder you from having a successful process, right? There are some things that, and I won't say it can totally stop you, but it definitely can stop you from reaching results as fast as you'd like. And sometimes that actually can stop you from getting the results you want. So the first thing is just the lack of consistency. And I see this one often. People will come in a crisis and they're like, okay, help me, help me, help me. So literally sometimes after the initial intake, because they finally unloaded the stuff that they've been suppressing for years, and I do mean years, they unload it and they feel so much lighter. They'll come in for a couple more sessions and they are feeling so much better, they'll stop coming. Well, I'm glad you got quick, immediate relief, but you didn't get the foundation to sustain that. And so again, they may come 2 or 3 times really consistently, and then they'll stop coming for about 6 months, and then another crisis will come. and then they want to come back in. It's fine. The therapist is most likely going to say, come on back in. But here's the problem. If you don't continue the work, you're just going to be living from crisis to crisis. And that's not the goal. The goal is for you to be able to really get yourself in a place of stability and getting yourself in a place of healing. So you don't want to have inconsistent or irregular attendance, because it really does affect the effectiveness of the therapeutic process. Also, not just irregular attendance, inconsistent effort. So there are people who come consistently, but their effort is not consistent. What do I mean? You show up every week, but you're not actually putting in the work. And that is going to be key, because when you come and you're not willing to do the work, well, then you're just kind of creating this space of, you're paying the therapist, but you're not getting the benefit that you need. You have to be willing to put in the work. Now, I want to put this caveat out there. Sometimes people aren't doing or appears that they're not doing the work, and it's not that they don't want to do the work. Their body is kind of in survival mode, and they shut down and they don't know how to respond or how to move forward. That's different than someone who's just saying, I'm not going to do my homework. I'm not going to do that because I don't really want to. I don't. So we're talking about someone who's just not putting in the effort that's needed. And if you are in therapy and you feel like you're in a stagnant place and you say, I really want to do it, but something's holding me back, have that conversation, because sometimes what we'll do is what we can do is begin to explore with that client. Let's talk about the resistance that's showing up in your body right now, and let's work through that in a healthy way, so that you can fight through the resistance. I've had clients and they'll come through and they'll say, I didn't do my homework. I go, okay. And here's the funny thing. Oftentimes they think I'm going to be upset because they didn't do their homework. And I'll say, I'm not angry at all. Let's talk about why. Let's talk about the resistance as to why you didn't do that homework. So I didn't do the homework because the thought of it was overwhelming. Okay, so let's break it down. Let's break it down even more. And so you start uncovering some of the resistance, and you start making sure that they are feeling safe in the process of even talking about why they didn't do the homework. And they begin to say, oh, and then even in not doing the homework, you can get a lot of insight. Oh, I did the homework for this assignment, but not this one. Why is that? This assignment was cool because it was talking about my mom. But this assignment was a little scarier because it talked about my relationship with my dad. And I don't like how that relationship is. And so again, you get a lot of insight even from not doing homework, but you do need to put the effort in to talk about what that resistance is all about to grow. Kind of short-term thinking, expecting immediate results and kind of giving up quickly. That is one of the things that can hold you back. Unrealistic expectations that, again, you're going to come in and I'm going to do some magic work and you're going to be all better. I'm not a magician. I'm a clinician, and my job is not to do magic. My job is to help you walk through that process and heal through the journey. Another reason that therapy doesn't always land or hit the way we want it to is sometimes there is not a good fit between you and the clinician being the counselor or therapist. It could just be like, we just don't vibe, and that's okay. Okay, I'm going to say that again. If you don't vibe with your clinician, which is what we talked about initially, compatibility is important. If you don't vibe, you don't have to stay there. Now, I recommend you don't ghost your counselor. A lot of people do. Trust me, a lot of us get ghosted all the time. We get ghosted. We also, sometimes it's not even ghosted. We get, I guess it is kind of ghosting, but then they'll show zombieing. That's what they call it. You just pop back up again. A crisis is coming. You're like, where have you been? Not heard from you in 6 months. And then they'll pop back up, right? Sometimes that's because there's not a connection, and sometimes that's because of other reasons. But if there is a lack of connection that you're feeling, it's okay for you to say, I don't feel like we have a good connection. I either want to talk through it, or I want to find a different therapist. Therapists are professionals. We're not going to take that personally. We are not to get angry because it's not a good fit. We understand. And ultimately, we want you to find somebody who's a good fit for you, right? So if you were seeing me and you've been coming for 6 or 7 months and you go, I am not feeling like I'm making any progress and I don't feel like I can trust this person or whatever, it's okay to say, hey, I would like to kind of explore other options. I've had someone, I saw them for a long time actually. And then finally he said, you know what? I've done a lot of work with you, but I want to talk about some stuff that I think I need to talk to with a male. I went, okay. And in fact, what I did was I said, let's look through some websites, let's look through some profiles to help you find a male that you think is a good fit for you. And if you want, we can even do that right now. And I can share based on what I know about you and what I know about the profession to see if we can find a good match for you. And so again, most therapists, unless they have their own stuff that they need to work through, we're not going to take it personally if you say this isn't a good match. We understand, and our goal is to help you. So speak up and advocate for yourself if it doesn't feel like it's a good match or you're not getting the things that you need from that process. Again, let me know if you guys have questions or comments. And the match can again be based on cultural identity, religious beliefs, personality, and all of those things. Now, the therapist is not going to typically be in there telling you all about their personal beliefs. But what will happen is sometimes, especially during, what was it, 2020, I had a lot of people said, I specifically wanted a Black person. I wanted a Black woman. And that was because there was so much going on in the world that was based around race. They wanted to have a space that they could come in and talk about those specific issues with someone who could, again, naturally understand, or at least more easily understand their point of view, And so I had clients come in and go, oh my gosh, this thing is happening. I can't believe this thing is happening. And there was a comfort level because their clinician looked like them and had an understanding of being able to come from where they were coming from. So sometimes that can be a issue when you're talking about a hindrance. Another thing is, this one is big, and this is probably one of the bigger hindrances when you're talking about therapeutic relationship, is avoiding difficult topics. How many avoiders do I have? If you are an avoider, go ahead and put in the comment. I know I avoid difficult topics. What do I mean? They will come in and they actually want help. But every time you start going down a path that they are uncomfortable with, they'll either try to change the subject, they may shut down. This is actually going to be a huge hindrance if you don't reach in there. Now, we're not going to force you to talk about something that you are unwilling to talk about. But I would encourage you, if you're going through the process, to say, I'm going to have to be vulnerable, even if that's just one layer at a time, right? One layer at a time. I'm seeing some people saying, I avoid difficult topics. Guess what? I actually was telling a client the other day. I said, think about it this way. If you have ingested some poison, what do you need to do? You need to get that out of your body. But what most of us do is we say, I've ingested poison and I don't want to think about it. I'm going to pretend that I did not take that poison and it's going to be better. The problem is, poison in your body is still poison in your body. And trauma can be almost like that. Trauma can be like poison inside of our bodies. And what we need to do is to get someone that can help us get that out in a healthy way, because trauma is going to show up. Okay, hear me. It will show up. And if you have someone that can help you do it in a healthy way, it can hopefully decrease the casualties of some of the impact of trauma in your life. I hope that makes sense. So an example, let's say you are, oh my gosh, you felt abandoned as a child. Let's say your mom abandoned you, right? And that was traumatic for you. Of course, if your parents abandon you, that's a trauma. Well, if you don't ever deal with that trauma, you will grow up and you'll be rejecting people that are sent to help you. You will be keeping people at bay, that are sent to help you. You will be maybe isolating yourself and feeling depressed and all of this stuff. And you may be doing it not even conscious of why you're doing what you're doing, which is why you can't be resistant to talk about the tough things, right? So now, I admit those things are tough, but I'm telling you, that's why you want to find someone that you feel like you can be authentic with. So you can cry and you can say all the things that you think you shouldn't say, and then they can help you process through that, right? And so you want to make sure that you allow yourself the opportunity to heal. And a lot of that, we say it's a common cliche, but we can't really conquer what we refuse to confront. And many of us just refuse to confront certain things, but those very things are still showing up in your life. And if I'm talking to you, I need you to hear me out. You know, you got something in there that you need to confront that you keep avoiding. I'm telling you that it is important that you are willing to say, I'm not going to keep being hijacked by this issue. I'm going to allow myself to enter into this therapeutic relationship. I'm going to allow myself to be open and vulnerable. That word scares people. Vulnerability scares people. But what I've learned over the years is that vulnerability can be scary, but it also can be very freeing and powerful. Very freeing and powerful. Again, I'm having some conversations with people, and they're saying, "Oh, no, 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 no! I don't want to have that conversation because if they say this, it's just going to hurt my feelings. If they say this, it's going to hurt me." I go, or you can have that conversation, and if they say that, you guys can talk through it. If they say it, you can process and heal from it, right? And so avoiding it does not cause the issue to go away. It just causes it to fester. Um, and it's much like an infection. If you have an infection in your foot, just because you ignore that infection in your foot does not mean it's going to go away. In fact, it's probably going to get worse and cause more issues. So I encourage you, if you know you have some stuff that you need to address and you've been avoiding addressing it, make today the day that you say, I'm not going to keep avoiding this. I'm going to commit to healing and being the best I can. Okay, so again, avoidance is another thing that can stop or hinder the therapeutic process from being successful. Resistance to change is another one, meaning I know this doesn't work, but I don't want to try something new because new is scary. So again, I understand that new can be scary. I actually don't. I embrace change a lot more now, but I used to be pretty resistant to a lot of change. I didn't want new paint in my house. I wanted the same color that I moved in with, and it doesn't matter. It's been 20 years. I wanted that same color. But I've now learned to embrace change, right? And so, what are we talking about? We're talking about embracing change. We're talking about consciously or unconsciously being able to say, I choose to be open even if it's difficult. I choose to be open to change even if that change is difficult. Um, the next thing is minimizing problems. So, minimizing problems, downplaying or denying your problems. So, if you come in and you say, oh my gosh, my dad used to beat us and da 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 da, but it could have been worse. It could have been, yeah, it could have been, but let's still talk about the impact of what happened. Let's talk about that. Let's not pretend that that wasn't a big deal for you. Let's actually be honest about the impact of the abuse. So downplaying things does not help you to actually grow. Now, I'm not saying you have to allow that to be your identity. Now, I think that's important as well. You don't have to allow your trauma to be that identity, but you don't want to just come in and go, yeah, that didn't really bother me. I actually see that one a lot where people will say things and they go, yeah, it didn't really bother me. And then go, but based on what you're telling me, here's what I'm seeing. And so they are downplaying the results of or the response of what happened to them. Here's another thing that will definitely stop the therapeutic process from being effective: the lack of honesty. I'm going to let that one sit for a minute. The lack of honesty, withholding information, um, distorting information so that you appear to be the hero in the story, or just being afraid that you're going to be judged. These are things that I've seen a lot that keep people from actually growing. And so I try to remind my clients, I'm not there to judge you. But sometimes it's just the fear of judgment because of things in their own past, or they're so afraid. Their identity is so tied to a certain image that they're afraid to go forth. But the honesty says, "Hey, I messed up. I did this really bad thing. we can talk through it if we want to. And what I really love is when clients come in and they are totally honest, and sometimes they'll say, you can judge me, but this is what I did, and I laugh at them and I'll say, I'm not judging you at all. I'm not judging you at all, and I appreciate you for being honest with me. And that way we can actually do exactly, Sheila. We can be free when we come in with an attitude of, I'm going to put it all out there. And I appreciate when clients come in with that attitude. Hey, this might not look pretty and you may think something about me, but I'm going to put it out there because, again, you're not being judged. And the best way to get to the bottom is to clean all that stuff out, right? The good, the bad. And each of us have things that we are amazing at, and then some things that we need to work on. But if we try to suppress or hide the things that we need to work on or things that we're not proud of, we actually don't do ourselves any service by doing that. And then another thing is called external stressors that keep us from progressing in the process. External stressors may be, things that happen in the environment. Financial problems, work, big conflict. You get a divorce in the middle of therapy that's not what you were going for, right? You were going for something else, and then some other life crisis happened. That can oftentimes set people back. But I encourage people to just stick through the process through it all. One of the one of the most humbling experiences I had, I remember this client was coming in. She was actually dealing with grief, and she was coming in regularly dealing with grief, and she came into a session and she was late. And I when she opened the door, I opened the door and she walked in, and I said something. I made a little joke about her being late, and she looks at me and she says, my son just died. Oh my God. Like, what? What? Do you know that could have totally thrown her off? But what she did was, she said, I needed therapy more than ever. And so, in that, you can imagine in that session, there was not a lot of talking on my part. There was not a lot of stuff I could do but to be with her. But I did. I sat there with her and I allowed her to be, to feel, to process and to say whatever was on her heart, basically just to be with her. And so there are moments that are absolutely going to take you out, which is why it's so important that, and that was a good thing. She didn't wait until that trauma to have to find a therapist, because think about trying to find somebody in the middle of that. She already had that relationship. So she was already on her way to the appointment. And she was like, I had to come here. And at the end, I hugged her. I allowed her to cry. Of course, I couldn't stop it anyways. But I was just there for her, and she was thanking me. And it wasn't because I did something special. It was because she had a place where she could be. And that's the beauty of therapy as well. Having a place where you can come in and be raw. And she was so raw that day. I think we both cried, because it's hard not to feel that human emotion with someone with such a deep loss with someone. I can feel myself getting teary eyed as I think about it. And so, again, it's really important that we recognize that life is going to happen, and it's important that you continue to go even in the middle of some of those crises, because it can help you. Now, sometimes go, I don't have the money. Talk to even that. Don't just ghost your therapist. If you don't have the finances, talk to them, because sometimes therapists may say, well, I can put you on a self-pay rate, or I can do this, or we can pause it for here, but this is what we can do. I can give you some assignments or whatever. So I would say still have the conversation. That can help you as well. Another thing is just a mental health symptoms, meaning their depression or anxiety make it so bad that they shut down. And I've seen that a lot, where we're going and we're working, and then a client will, what I like, ghost us again, right? Or what seems to be ghosting us. And then sometimes 3 months later, they may reemerge and call and say, hey, I want to get back in. And as we're talking, they'll say, I was so low, I couldn't even reach out. I was so low, this thing. And so if that's the case, I suggest people really have kind of a plan. Like, hey, if I don't reach out within this many weeks, if you're prone to doing something like shutting down in that way, if I don't reach out to me, and here's what we'll do. Or, I have a game plan that my brother's going to do this, and he's going to come and check on me, or sister's going to whatever. Substance abuse issues. If you're dealing with substance abuse can absolutely hinder the process because you're dealing with two different issues, your mental health stuff and then the substance issues. And so again, substance abuse issues can definitely derail or throw off or impact the therapeutic process. And then the other one is kind of low motivation. I don't really want to change. I'm just doing this for somebody else. So sometimes you'll have couples and one person is doing a lot of work and the other person's like, I don't really want to do this. I'm not fighting. And when I work with couples, I'll typically ask both of them, what's your commitment level? What is your commitment level? I'll say on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 means I'm all in, and one is I got one foot out the door. Where are you in this process? I'll ask them that at the beginning. Um, and then sometimes in the middle, I'll go, where are we in our commitment level? Why? Because if one person's all in and the other person's already out the door, you're going to have a different kind of struggle, right? If one person is all in and the other person's kind of coming along, you have a different way to address that. And so it's important that you're able to effectively look at their level of commitment and motivation. And then sometimes it's the lack of skills or tools, which again needs to be talked through. You're struggling to learn the skills that you need to learn. So it's important that your clinician is prepared, but it's also important that you are prepared for that process. And so I hope what you learned was that therapy doesn't have to be a scary monster. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. To find a therapist doesn't have to be overwhelming, and the process itself doesn't have to be overwhelming. Now, I would not be being authentic if I said that therapy is always easy, because sometimes you're going to hear things that are not easy. But take it one step at a time. I actually, it was funny. I have a client, um, and I will say things that are not always easy for them to hear, and they will roll their eyes at me, and I'll go, I'm a mom, so I'm okay with those eyes rolling. But again, it's about building a safe place. Even though I may say some things they don't want to hear, they also know, or at least I hope they feel, that I'm never there to judge them. And so I think it's important that you recognize that the process may not always feel good, right? You may cry, you may shed some tears, but you're also worth it. You are worth going through that so that you can get to a healthier you. Just like working out physically doesn't always feel good. I went to work out this morning, and trust me when I say it did not always feel good. But the reason I keep going back is because I believe that, number one, that I'm worth it. Number two, there are certain things that I want to see in my future. And if I stop, I'm impacting whether or not I get to see certain things in my future, right? I have a desire to live a healthy, long life. I have two beautiful girls, and I want to live long and strong so that I can be a part of my grandchildren's life. I'm not going to be able to be an active role in my grandchildren's life the way I want to be if I don't take care of myself. Even if I'm still alive, I want to be a grandmother that can play with my grandchildren and can take them on adventures and do fun things. I don't want to be just going, yeah, I'm old, I can't do anything. And so I'm going to have to make certain decisions now so that I can live that life in the future. Likewise, emotionally, you're going to have to make certain decisions now so that you can look back and say, oh, I remember I used to be so angry and bitter, or so hurt and depressed, or so discouraged. And now I'm really in a good place because I took the time to do the work, to go to, if you will, the emotional gym, to do the work, and it was worth it. And I'm so much better for it. So again, let me know. I don't have a lot of people on right now. Make sure you guys share this video if you haven't already. Share, tag your friends, even though we are at the end. Go ahead and share and tag this video to your story, to your page, tag your friends and family, because I think a lot of people need to hear this so that we can understand that therapy is not a scary process. And in fact, it can be really beautiful. And I talked about some tears, but I laugh with my clients. We get in there and we crack up at certain things. We have a genuine relationship. Now, it has to stay in the therapeutic bounds, right? We can't hang out on the weekend. But we develop a genuine relationship, and that's important. So I want you to know that the therapy process doesn't have to be a big scary monster. You can do this. Let me know how I can help you. If you guys need anything, let me know. If you know of someone who is needing therapy, you can give me a call. My work number is 470-410-9790. Again, that's 470-410-9790. And then my email is tenitria@gmail.com. So again, if you're saying, I have a friend who's thinking about counseling, I want to refer them, give them that contact information. I will be glad to work with them. I do have some openings. And again, if I can't work with you because I know you personally or whatever, look at one of those sites that we talked about earlier, psychologytoday.com, therapyforblackgirls.com, or therapyforblackmen.org. Look at one of those sites, check with your insurance to see if you can find somebody, because every time each of us gets stronger, we all get stronger. So again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Make sure you join us back here next week. Do me a favor, if you can or will, go over to YouTube, like and subscribe to my channel on YouTube. I'm trying to get my numbers up on YouTube. So if you would do that, I would greatly appreciate it. It's my name. I try to keep things consistent. So YouTube, look me up, Tenitria Williams on YouTube, and like and subscribe there. I'll have those videos, and I'm working to build that platform up as well. So again, thank you guys. Join me right back here next Thursday at 12 p.m. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.